Welcome to another edition of Positive Solutions for Life podcast. I'm Peggy Meyer. Today's guest is Morin. She is a licensed therapist, a wellness coach, an international best-selling co-author of the book Belonging: Secrets to Soothe the Soul, which I'm just going to say promote it just a little bit right here. Marie's YouTube channel, she has that, Morin Holistic Therapy. She educates viewers on how to move forward and navigate the complex and widespread condition of estrangement and family rifts. Marie also has an ebook, Feeling Heartbroken and Alone: How to Pick Up the Pieces When You're Estranged, a weekly blog on her website, morinholistictherapy.com, and hosts workshops about family connection, sharing hope, and strategies to support those with strained family relationships. So welcome to the podcast, Marie.
Thank you so much for having me, Peggy.
Oh, I'm excited for our conversation today because, wow, we're all in a family of some sort. So we'll figure out what we can do to help it out. So can you start the conversation first by just sharing a little bit more about you and how it has led to where you are today?
Okay, here we go. So, this is always like the hardest question to answer with not too many words. So, I grew up in a really interesting family where there was quite a bit of um, dysfunction, let's call it that, and it left me as an adult in a really interesting state of not really knowing who I was and how comfortable I felt about myself, and actually struggled a lot with things like depression, anxiety, self-image, all of that, and came to understand that a lot of it had to do with, but not only, some of the things I learned as a kid.
Mm,
And so there was a lot of strain in the relationship, most primarily with my mom. My
mhm.
dad got away with a lot because he seemed to have a very soft way about him, and my mom not so much. And through the discovery of what went on with my mom, I became very interested in this topic kind of accidentally. I didn't start out doing this. I was more of a life coach. Let me get you to like your goals kind of thing. And then it transformed into working with families because that's where my heart is. I discovered that what I believe we really all want is to be connected to someone where we can be who we are,
Mhm.
know that we're loved and valued. And if we can get that ourselves, we also want to give that. And that's how connection happens. And what better place than within the family? And sometimes people just need a little help with that. So I love doing that. And I'm privileged to do that with the people that I get to see.
That's amazing. Yes, we're all from a family, and I do agree. I mean, I think we all want connection. One of my biggest things that I want to hopefully instill in my kids and just live out is just deep connections, with people. What are some ways in which you help families through some tough times?
Okay, so let's say that someone comes to me because they have a problem with their daughter, okay, and
Mhm.
it's mom, because it seems to be a typical thing, mother-daughter relationships. And the mom is like, oh my gosh, my daughter won't talk to me anymore. She's just ghosting me. That's a typical thing.
Mhm.
Or she's very angry with me and she said she needs space. And the mother is up at arms. And they can either have one or two kind of postures: a lot of guilt that they did some terrible things, which some of them did. There were like things like they experienced, the mom had depression or maybe addictions, or maybe there was a divorce. And so they come in feeling extremely bad about themselves, or they come in like, I have no clue what I did. I mean, everything was fine. We were really close. And so we sift through together by getting to know, like, so what was more of what reality happened, instead
Mhm.
of the mom in the first scenario being extremely at fault for everything. What's the reality there? Because, of course, everyone falls short in their parenting, right? We all
Mhm.
have something. And so I help them sift through that. And for the parent that is like, oh my God, I have no clue, I help them find empathy because there had to be something. uh,
Mhm.
Joshua Coleman, who is kind of I'll call him the father of the understanding for parents of estrangement, says, find the kernel of truth. Like, what is that thing? And so I help them find the kernel why so that they can empathize and then show up for their kid because we all want to be understood. And if parents aren't really understanding, meaning validating, and it's that thing like, I get what you're saying. I hear you.
Mhm.
I see you. I
Mhm.
know what you mean. I could see why you might feel like that, right? We don't do enough of that, I think, as moms.
Right.
We're always like, let me tell you how it went, you know. Tell you exactly what happened. And that's adults don't want to hear that. They want to know that we get them as adults. So I
Right.
think I help them bridge the gap there.
Mhm. So, you bring out a point of, you're working with mainly adults with adult parents, or maybe they've passed on, maybe even too, just like figuring out and untangling and sifting through what their beliefs are. Cause, I heard you, say at the beginning too, it's what we learned as kids. It's some of those ingrained like beliefs that we hang on to, but they might not necessarily be true. We might be looking at it through a different lens than maybe the kernel of truth. So, is there some exercises or something like how do you help people sift through that? Like, how do you find that kernel of truth?
Well, a lot of it is to try and be as well. One of the questions you had asked me about was the mind, what types of thing mindset wise. And I
Yep.
think being mindful, practicing mindfulness, and that's paying attention.
Mm,
Think some of us aren't paying attention enough without judgment. So, for example, you go in and you do some self-reflecting and you open yourself up to the possibility that maybe you haven't been as objective with your assessment of your history
mhm,
as you could be. And you ask yourself self-reflective questions. So what was going on? And can I just stop and listen without letting myself react so much that I avoid understanding what happened?
mm,
That makes sense. Like, and
yeah.
just be mindful for a minute. Don't judge, just pay attention, just observe. And I
Mhm.
think that exercise of self-reflection, of observing without the judgment, which is not easy to do,
No, no, not at
because
all.
we want to do all this fixing in our head to make us feel
Mhm.
better because we usually don't feel too great about it, you know. And this, no one wakes up in the morning and says, gee, I just want to feel crummy about myself today, you
Right,
know.
right, right.
So
No.
yeah, so I think that helps, just doing some self-reflecting and always seeing, and this was the second piece, is having compassion for
Mhm,
yourself, right?
mhm,
So we're always taught be empathetic of others. Yeah, but how about ourselves? A lot of times we're, so
mhm,
judgmental and negative about ourselves. And so to just take the day with, all right, I'm going to be as compassionate as possible. I'm going to take responsibility for my actions, but then I'm also going to wash it in a lot of self-compassion. And the motto I teach is and this is not my motto. I don't know who originated it, but I'm borrowing it. You did the best you could with the resources you had at that time
mhm,
and
mhm.
kind of wash yourself with that. I feel like a lot of parents and adult children that we kind of get caught in the weeds of the self-incrimination and that doesn't help us.
Right, right. Yeah, because there's a lot there. I mean, that first piece of mindfulness, and you're talking about self-reflection, it's that self-awareness piece where we have to like almost be a third person to ourselves. We have to like remove ourselves from the environment or the situation and be as non-reactive to our emotions and non-attached to it, and kind of stop our brain from kind of like rationalizing all of the reasons why this might have been this way or the projections we have about it. So it's really that's kind of a hard skill, like you said, to learn how to do is to remove yourself. But it's very, very important. I find that in a lot of personal development stuff is that self-awareness piece.
Mm,
Where do you sit in that, scenario? And your beliefs about something, how can you like stop that from projecting onto somebody else or making it inferred for another reason, like a blaming or things like that. So, do you have anything else to add to that mindfulness? Because that's such a big piece.
it is. Well, here's the other thing that I like the word simultaneous work, right?
Mhm,
So we have this idea of mindfulness and self-awareness where I call it the bird's eye view, where you kind of pull yourself out,
Mhm.
look from a different spot, right? But then we can't just not lay with the feelings that we have. Like, you as a former therapist, you're always got the therapist piece
Yeah.
within you. Know that you can't grow unless you allow yourself to feel what it is you're feeling. Like the practice, which I'm guilty as charged, I am like, my go-to is let me avoid this feeling because it's super uncomfortable. I got
Mhm.
other things to do. Let me go, do something,
And you're
right?
not alone in that at all. I think I would want to say there's a majority of people that pull that card. Just avoid it. Don't want to feel it. Don't want to deal with it. Move on.
Exactly. But that's the simultaneous thing of what we practice, which is another skill, which is I call emotional visits. And really what it is planned opportunities to process what you feel. So let's pick on guilt. Guilt is a big one, right? I
Yep.
did something, I know I did something to my kid, I hurt them, and now you're landing in the guilt. Well, okay, you feel guilty and it stinks and you feel bad and it's not fun, but it's not going to go away simply because you're aware of it. Now you have to process because we know
Mhm.
that these emotions stick in our body. They become a part of us. And so
Mhm.
we have to allow time for them to move. And they can't move through unless we actually feel. And it feels uncomfortable. But
Mhm.
that's the practice of processing. And it's always helpful if someone is with us, if we have a therapist or a good
Mhm.
wellness coach,
Yep.
someone that knows how to do that, that can teach
Yes.
you how to do it so you could do it on your own and feel better. Um, because that's the goal. We don't want to get stuck in, oh my God, I'm guilty, and then not be able to move forward, right?
Mhm.
Moving
Mhm.
forward means you're aware, you still have feelings,
Mhm.
you let yourself do it, you're mindful about your awareness in terms of your personal growth, you're doing all that work, but
Mhm.
you're taking steps to not be stuck there. You're
Mhm.
moving forward, you're doing new things. You're able to like say, all right, so now I do feel guilty. I did that. Now what? Should I apologize? That's a good thing. Should I say,
Yeah.
I'm sorry? Could you forgive me? That kind of act. And those acts in families, that's not always the way that families do things. It's like there's conflict, there's things that happen, and then boom, nothing, no resolution, no working through, and people are hurt. There's nothing said. So
Right.
if we could learn how to do that as individuals, like easily say, wow, I missed it. I'm sorry. Take
Mhm.
responsibility. I hope that all made sense. I kind of went, maybe I
No,
went on.
no, it's good. It's good. I mean, you're bringing out a lot of different pieces. We have to be aware of that. So, like, I'm just thinking of times where it's like, oh crap, I just like my own emotions, trapped in my own emotions, lashed out on a kid for, a little thing, maybe. And then the awareness, the guilt a little bit is like, oh man, I overreacted on that. But then being able to open the door to have some, compassion for myself, but then open the door to resolve that a little bit by apologizing for the behavior, because that if I don't, it kind of leaves that door closed a little bit, and never know what the other person might be thinking about that. Because if it's a kid, it's kind of like, okay, what did I do wrong, is usually the kind of thing. They're not going to say, oh gosh, mom's crazy. It's usually, okay, like, what did I do? And then they self-inflict on that. And it's a whole like vicious cycle. So we can kind of see how it's difficult in families and in any relationship, that something can spur something else, and without it being resolved or addressed, it continues and makes it a lot bigger.
Exactly. Yeah. I love that you use the word resolution, resolve, right?
Mhm.
How to resolve even that amount of conflict where you said something, you did something, and the person reacted. Maybe the kid that reacts, the adolescent, they may be the kind that will just close up
Mhm.
and then feel the hurt and not say anything. And what happens then? Loss of connection, right? Or
Right.
it could be that kid that lashes out and then and so you see all different possibilities. So
Mhm.
what do you do then? You have a conversation. But as people, I mean, I tend to like, I don't want to go headway into a conflict if I can avoid it, right? What
Right.
it? I'm like, okay, let's just like make like this didn't happen. No, it happened, and it needs to be resolved for families to work
Mhm.
better, right? So that we can enjoy the beauty of family, right? So I just want to add this. Okay, now let me see if I can remember the actual study. Oh, for Pete's sake, it happens to me all the time, but it's okay.
That's right.
So we know through many, many studies that people that are connected within the family, where they have good family connections where you feel like you're seen and heard, you can
Mhm.
talk, you can resolve. These people have better health outcomes, mental health and physical health,
Mhm.
lifelong than those of us that tend to avoid, those of us that don't want to resolve.
Mhm.
And so that's enough motivation, at least for me,
Yeah.
um, that this is a good thing. Let's learn how to have a better family. Let's learn how to learn
Mhm.
what love really means.
Right. And you brought that up a couple times about, the feelings can kind of get stuck. And so what kind of feelings do we want to get stuck? I feel like it's closed. And then yeah, our systems, our bodies are meant to move and flow and stuff. So if we close off something, and close off a part of us, try to avoid a certain feeling, we don't want to be uncomfortable, we don't want to deal with conflict, whatever that is, we kind of close off a part of that. Well, then our system, there's a hiccup in it, right? There it gets stalled out in some ways, so it doesn't work as well. And then it has to do something else to try to make do because this part over here is stuck. And that can come out in physical ailments, stress, other lots of other things that cause some health issues and some dis-ease in our body. And so you helping people learn how to express that and open that up, address those issues, even if that person is no longer in somebody's life, right? That's
Yeah,
awesome. That's awesome. How healing can that be? And look at the life that we really, really want to live is more freeing and open and that connection. We just want to connect with people.
we
And
do.
and
Yeah,
if we don't open ourselves up and address it, we stay disconnected. It's that closing out that piece.
yes, yeah. And I think that's it. We're understanding what it means to have genuine connection. A lot of times it starts with ourself. And in the book, in my story, it was me understanding, yeah, there were things that happened when I was a kid, but the way that I personally translated was disconnecting from myself. So I became a perfectionist. And gosh, I read in your no, I'm sorry, was it you? No, it was someone else and she had this whole um thing on perfectionism. But let's talk about that for a second.
Mhm. Yep.
Because when we're disconnected from ourselves, we don't really have insight that we have to like clean the house from top to bottom. Everything has to be orderly. We can't leave anything on our list without a lot of distress. And we have that feeling like we have to keep going and we're very performance oriented. That's a miserable way to live.
Hmm.
There's no peace there, no peace to be found unless you're on that, right? Well, a
Right.
hamster wheel.
Oh,
So
yeah.
learning how to connect with yourself and saying, gee, you know what? I need to get off this. I need to find a different path. And
Hmm.
part of these, most of what these things that I chose, the mindset, which I think are the most important, the compassion, having that peace where you're compassionate with yourself and being mindful and paying attention is really a way for us to connect with who we are so that we can not only show up for us, because guess what? Wouldn't it be nice to have a life where we feel joy,
Oh,
where
yeah.
we're not so like looking at ourselves through this hyper lens of everything we do wrong, but we
Mhm.
can look at it in terms of, all right, I'm human, I make mistakes, I'm going to do better,
Right.
right? That kind of a look. And then if we show up for ourselves, then we can connect with others and they can connect with us. And so it's a win-win.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Because I really feel like, if we don't stay in touch with ourselves, if we don't really truly understand ourselves, we can't truly understand another person. We can't love I believe we can't love anybody more than we can love ourselves. So if we don't love ourselves very much, we don't have a lot to give. We don't know how to give. And that can affect our relationships. But that's that compassion, that empathy that you're talking about for ourselves as well, is like we have to love ourselves and that whole thing. And I love that, reminding ourselves, we did the best we can, with what we had at the time. I love that because it's a good reminder that we are all still on this journey of learning. So just because 15 years ago, I responded this way to a certain situation. Doesn't mean I'm doomed to do that the rest of my life. Like, I might have reacted the best I could at that time, but now I know different and I can do other things. And now I can respond differently.
Yeah, exactly. And that's very freeing, don't you think?
Oh, I mean, I just felt free just saying that. But I think that also helps people just go, oh yeah, you know what? I'm not stuck to where I was before. I can learn something. If I'm more self-aware, I can change, how I respond or how I react the next time. And even if the other person responds and reacts the same way, we can choose to respond and react differently inside ourselves.
Mm, I agree. I think that's key. Do you remember yourself when you were in your 20s?
Oh, yeah, probably not the best.
That was a part of you, right?
Right,
And
right.
in your 30s?
Yeah, yep. Still
So
crazy,
in your teens, all of those people were a part of you. And sometimes I think, I don't know if you have this experience, like you were a different person because of how far you've come, and all those experiences have helped you grow. And we're not the same. We change, thank God.
Oh, no kidding. And I laugh because I just think when you're saying that, I have 6 kids. My oldest is 28, my youngest is 11. So my oldest ones are like, well, you never did that for us. These guys get away from a lot of stuff. It's like, yeah, but I've learned over the years. I'm like, I can't parent the same way, 15 years later, because I learned so much. And, you might have been the guinea pig. Like I was young. I had no experience in parenthood. I just did the best I could.
Uh,
And I've learned a little bit. I've learned that I need to like lose some stress. I don't have to worry about all those little things, that I have to let go of some of those perfectionism things where things have to be perfect. Now I just kind of do it in different ways. And I'm like, oh, why do I do that? Right? Because it stresses me out. But I'm still learning. We all still learn those little pieces about us.
I love that you bring that up because that's so common, right? With, oh, you didn't treat me like that, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
They get away with all of this stuff. Like we never got away with that. And I was like, well, it's a lot less stress for me and they're still learning something. So it's a little bit different, but expectations are kind of the same. But
yeah,
the way we do it is a little bit different. But I think that happens a lot in families.
yeah, absolutely. Well, our first kid or two is our kind of experiment, unfortunately, for all parents,
Right,
We
right.
don't know exactly what we're doing, and we are doing the best that we can,
Hmm.
what we have, thinking, okay, if I'm just going to be very rigid about everything, which, that's the way that we have to do it this way. Or
Right,
for some of us, no way. It's like, okay, anything goes, which my perfectionistic self could never have done that.
right.
No,
Yeah.
no
No.
way. That perfectionist needed everything to be a certain, yeah,
In a box and with boundaries. Yeah.
yep,
I
yep,
laugh because sometimes my younger kids, I'm like, I'm such a bad mom. I just don't let you do this and I don't let you do that. They still don't have a cell phone. And I'm like, you know, but you're surviving. And they're like, it's okay. It's okay. It's like, good, because those days are coming when I'll lose that control
yeah.
over some of those things.
And it sounds like you're doing the work to remain in connection with your kids. And I love that you listen, like you don't just poo-poo. You listen. You say, all right, yeah, that maybe that was the case. And guess what? I'm a different person now. You're spot on that. Yes, I didn't do that for you. And so you're listening and you're hearing them, you're getting what they say. And that's so key to remaining connected.
Yeah, and that listening piece, because that was a good thing you brought that back up, because that was an idea I had when you were talking earlier about how we never really were taught, I don't think, at least I wasn't, and a lot of people that I've worked with over the past, how to communicate.
Mm.
That listening skill. And I don't know if it's getting any better. How
Yeah.
would you suggest somebody to try, like, do you have like one little tip? Like, how can we listen better?
Well, it's so funny because It's not as though I am like above all of these things and like I'm saying this because I'm so good at it. It's really more because I have done all of these things. Okay.
Mhm.
So a conversation with an adult child or an adolescent. Okay. When you're listening to them, are you not, for the most part, thinking of the next thing you're going to say to rebut what they're saying? You're not sitting there thinking, well, you know what? The best thing to do right now is to just stop talking and pay attention, zone in. What is it that they're saying? What are they really trying to tell me right now? Because if they're coming out hot, I love that expression.
Yeah,
This is the
yeah.
new verbiage, right? They're coming in hot. And all of a sudden you get that feeling like, oh man, I'm being attacked. So you feel like you're going to react. Of course, that's what you will do unless you're being mindful and you're paying
Mhm.
attention.
Right.
You have to stop and say, okay, this person is hurting right now. Otherwise, they wouldn't be hot. They
Yeah.
don't know how to say it the best way. But guess what? I'm the mom or I'm the dad, and I can hear, I can pause, I can pay attention, I can then listen, and then the next piece validate. So what's my little tidbit? That was a long thing to get to the tidbit. Listen more than you speak. And that's what I have not done most of my life. So,
Yeah, well, agreed there. I mean, I thought, I think sometimes being a therapist, it was like one of the best things because I would inevitably give great advice and help to somebody, but it was actually what I needed. I would have clients come into my office and what they're struggling with was exactly what I was struggling with. And I just needed to hear somebody else's voice tell me what I needed to do, which was really literally my own voice telling somebody else what to do, but to take my own advice. But that is important, that listening, that turning off the brain of what I'm going to say next. And like we can catch, and we know when people are doing that to us, but can we catch ourselves when we're doing it to somebody else? That's the big key. And
mm,
then I think the other piece of that kind of came out for me is, the listen more than you speak piece is actually listening to the message that they're sending. And do you think they actually want a response? Do they
mm,
want advice? Like what do you think they want from you? Do they just like, because I know one of my kids is just gets in the car and just goes, and just like spreads everything out, like just dumps everything of what went out in school that day. They are not looking for, Mom, how should I handle this situation next time? They're not asking me for that. They just have that emotional and that just dumping of all the things that happened that day. But that is a listening skill because they just listen and then validate, like, oh gosh, that sounds like a rough day, and leave it at that.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I love that you said that. You're just having a hard day. I get it.
And we don't have to fix it. And I can find myself in that fixing mode a
Oh,
lot. And then you can see them go, "Mama, mama." They're like going off. They're like, that's not exactly what I wanted to hear.
yeah, you lose them.
Hmm.
You lose them and you annoy people too, in my opinion. Like the last thing, all right, let's just divert into husbands and wives,
Okay.
okay? Right? So you go to your husband and you really don't want to be fixed, but that's what they're about.
Yeah.
They got the solution and you just want to vent. You don't want to know how you missed it. You don't want to know what they think.
Hmm.
You just want them to get in the corner with you. Maybe, say, oh, that must have been so hard. I could see why you're so upset or aggravated or whatever. And then please shut up. you know, like we want that. We need that so
Right.
much. And so it's hard to get. And it's been a learning lesson, my husband and I, because we both do it to each other. I
Hmm.
will admit it. I want to fix and tell him, oh, you know
Oh
what, you
yeah.
should have done this. And then I have to catch myself. And I think that's part of the piece of slowing down
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
for me learning. So I taught myself how to meditate because I think that's what you need to do in order
Hmm.
to slow down. Meditation is really
Hmm.
good. And that helped me tremendously. Did it solve all of my problems? No, but it helped me to get a little bit more of that bird's eye
Hmm.
myself so that now, unless I am really caught off guard, I'm much better at that skill. And I think all of us can be if we just pause for a second and go in and say, okay, this person really needs me to show up for them. Let me just
Hmm.
be there.
Yeah.
either.
And a lot of times too, I tell people, in those conversations, it's like, well, okay, what do you really want from that person? If you're coming in and they need a vent, like, let them know. Like, agenda meetings, for business agenda meetings, have these, purpose, like, what are we here for? Right. And to kind of use that to prep somebody on a conversation. So I just need a vent. I need to prep my husband for that. You know what? Just listen, because that's the connection that we're wanting, looping back to that connection. We want to be seen and heard and feel like somebody gets us. And,
Mm,
and in order for that to happen, we need to prep them and saying, hey, you know what? I just need you to listen.
mm,
And then I don't want you to fix anything. Just listen, hear me out. And then hopefully that helps.
yeah. I love that you said that because I tell couples all the time that very same thing. Go in already saying exactly what you need so
Mhm.
they know. Because they may be caught off guard and want to fix you because that's just the way we are. We want to
Yep.
come up with a solution. And that's so key. I love that you mentioned that. Yeah, why not just share? And if you're close enough, they can take it, they'll listen, they'll give
Yeah.
us what we need. We just
Yeah.
gotta give them a little help. Just a little help.
And then just ask that for in return. You guys can, like for my husband, it's like, okay, you're ready to, because he'll do that. He just will, spills out some things too. And it's just like, okay, do you want me just to hear you out on this? Or do you want me to give you some of ideas? Yeah, some solutions. Because our brain, it's not just guys, it's our brain is like that problem solution thing. It gets a question, it wants to answer it. So if somebody presents something, you gotta like find the solution to it. And so a lot of us are like that, and it's just kind of a natural thing. But
Yeah, absolutely. And that's interesting because we can have this kind of, I believe you'd call it didactic relationship, husband, wife, right?
mhm,
Maybe two sisters, two friends, and this interchange. But what often happens, and we'll go back to this thing that I do now with adult children and parents, is that it's so different. That piece is missing. It's not this equal. This new dynamic where the adult child is really the one that has the beef, let's say. They're the
mhm,
ones that are upset. And so rather than it being equal, it's more like this. And the
mhm,
parent has to come in and actually do a swap of perspective of themselves where they're more in service in a loving state.
mm,
Want to explain a little bit about that, meaning you show up supporting your adult child without the expectation that there's going to be equality and you're going to be able to say, yeah, I hear what you're saying to me, but let me tell you about what was going on. I'll explain it all to you and you'll get it. No, because that perception for them is defensiveness. Now they're thinking, well, this is why I don't really want to talk to you, mom or dad.
right.
Because time I try and tell you something, you have 1,000 excuses of why that happened rather than validating, which is that, hey, I think I hear what you're saying to me. You're telling me this, and oh, wow, I get it. I
Yeah.
hear, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's a different thing. And I think a lot of parents pine for this equality, and some parents have it. Some parents have these outstanding relationships. I haven't cracked the code yet, but I'm in search of it.
So
I
anybody with that, go to Marie. She needs some more, research on that,
Yeah,
figuring
we
it
did
out.
research. No, I think most of it is that connective piece all along when they're young. I think that's what it is, where we carry on of having our child feel, oh, well, here is the word, okay? And a lot of parents hate it, safe, where the kid feels like they can say these things without being met with a lot of angst in the
Hmm.
receptive part, right?
Hmm. Yep.
So that's safety. And husbands and wives and friends need that too,
Right.
right?
Right. Right. We all do. We just want to feel like we don't have to bring up our armor and defensiveness to be able to be in a relationship. We don't have to be on guard, just prepared for whatever is thrown at our way. We want to be in a safe spot, a safe relationship where we are heard, where we're seen, where we're understood, and we don't have to bring that baggage, that armor with us in order to be in a conversation.
I love that you mentioned that. Yeah, that armor, because that's so uncomfortable. It doesn't feel
Mhm.
feel good,
No,
to protect ourselves and be on our toes, you
yeah.
know?
And it's not who we truly are. We're just, we put up these defense mechanisms to kind of support us to not get hurt, but it doesn't create that connection that we want. Oh my gosh,
Exactly.
we could go on forever. I mean, these conversations, there's so much to unpack in relationships and family dynamics and conversations. Where can listeners find out more about you and your coaching?
Oh, okay. So that's a good question. Morin Holistic. So it's Morin holistictherapy.com. That's my new and revised, thank goodness, finally, website.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Finally in the midst of transforming. So yeah, so and if you want to find me, there's tons of resources there. Yeah, lots of blogs and things. So lots of
Awesome. Great. And I know you mentioned in your bio, you have a YouTube and stuff. So we'll put the links in the show notes so people can make sure they can find you wherever they love to go to first. But as we wrap up today, what do you have a thought or a quote that you would like to leave the listeners with?
I do. So, I had to go on a hunt for a quote, right? Because, and there's so many of them.
Oh
And I thought, who do I love the best of, I guess, iconic humans that have walked the planet?
my
And
goodness.
always comes back to, and I want to say a minute about this. So when
Mhm.
Mother Teresa died, it was actually the same day that Princess Diana died.
Oh,
And it was, and all of and it deserved to be on Princess Diana, another iconic human. But I thought, that was exactly what Mother Teresa would have wanted so that she didn't get a lot of the limelight. She never wanted the limelight.
mhm,
She
mhm.
just wanted to serve. And so I went on a hunt and I read a bunch of quotes and I found this one and I thought, in light of what we're talking about, she said, we must know that we have been created for greater things, not just to be a number in the world, not just to go for diplomas, this work and that work. We have been created in order to love and be loved.
Mm, I love that.
That's a good one, right?
Yeah. I mean, it makes us think a lot of different things, but again, it goes back to our relationships of love. We just want to be loved, connecting with others, to
We
be
do. And
seen.
I think we can have it, can't we?
We can, and we can choose that, and we can choose to learn skills and to reach out and get help to help us love more, love ourselves more in order to love others.
That's really well said. Yep, I love it.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Marie. It has been a pleasure.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This was really fun.